The automatic doors of the St. Gabriel Medical Center emergency department hissed open, spilling in a wave of cold air street noise, and the sharp scent of rain on asphalt. Inside, the air was warmer and heavier, thick with antiseptic stale coffee and the faint metallic tang of bleach. Monitors beeped in uneven rhythms. A stretcher squeaked. Someone laughed too loud at the nurse's station, trying to sound relaxed. Naomi Carter stood at the medication cabinet with a clipboard in her hand and a black metal pen balanced between her fingers. Her navy scrub top was a size too big across the shoulder sleeves pushed up to the elbows. On her left wrist, a worn black watch hugged the skin, its digital face small and square. On the right, a braided paracord bracelet pressed into her pulse. She moved shelf to shelf, reading labels, running her thumb along vials and boxes. Epinephrine full. Saline bags counted twice. A's. Extra tubing compressed neatly into rows. Every few seconds she wrote something on the inventory sheet, the pen clicking softly as it touched the paper. Behind her, the air shifted. "Carter, you planning to stock the whole East Coast?" a voice said. Naomi glanced over her shoulder. Dr. Lucas Park leaned against the doorway, white coat, half open. Stethoscope dangling around his neck like an afterthought. He had a paper cup in one hand and the bored confidence of someone who had worked here long enough to claim corners. "Just making sure we have what we need," Naomi said. He sipped his coffee, watching her slide another tray into place. "This is the eat," he said. "If we run out, we yell and someone throws stuff at us. You can relax." Naomi closed the cabinet, checked the lock, signed her name at the bottom of the form. "I work better this way," she replied. He shrugged and pushed off the wall. "Suit yourself. Just keep an ear out. We move fast here." He was gone before she could answer. A paramedic wheeled a teenager past with a sprained ankle and a busted skateboard, talking loudly about gravity and bad decisions. Phones rang. Footsteps crossed and recrossed the scuffed linoleum. At the nurse's station, the charge nurse, Margot, tapped a pen against a stack of charts. Her graying hair was twisted into a bun that never seemed to move. "Naomi," she called. "Got a room for you." Naomi slipped the clipboard into its slot and stepped up beside her. "Room 5, Margot said. 50-something male fell down some stairs. Alert, complaining of hip pain and embarrassment. Vitals are stable, or so they say." There was a hint of amusement in her voice, like she had seen this story 100 times. Naomi nodded and took the chart. In room 5, the fluorescent light hummed softly. A man with a thinning hairline and a paunch rested on the bed, jeans cut away at one knee, paper sheet pulled haphazardly over his legs. His face flushed red when he saw her. "I'm fine," he said quickly. "My wife insisted." Naomi smiled, a small, even thing. "I'm Naomi. I'll check you over while we wait for the doctor. Can you tell me what happened?" "Missed the last 2 steps," he said. "Been walking those stairs 20 years. Guess they finally got tired of me." His wife sat in the corner on a plastic chair, twisting her wedding ring. Naomi registered the white knuckles the way the woman's foot tapped and stopped, tapped and stopped. Naomi checked blood pressure, pulse, oxygen saturation. The numbers looked reasonable. She wrote them down, then rolled up the man's gown a little, just enough to see his torso. Purple bruises bloomed along his flank, not a single patch, but streaks and splatters across the ribs. "How far did you fall?" she asked. 3-4 steps, landed on my butt," he said. "Not very heroic." She pressed gently along his side. He tried to joke, but the sound caught and flattened when her fingers reached one particular spot. His eyes flicked away, mouth tightening. "Sharp?" she asked. He swallowed. "Yeah, kinda deep." Naomi's gaze moved from his face to the bruise pattern, then to the monitor, then to the way his breathing had gone a fraction shallower. She clicked her pen, wrote one more line on the chart, then stepped out to the hallway. Lucas was at the computer typing orders. "Room 5, she said. "Mr. Dorsey. His bruises are tracking along his ribs, not just over the hip. He has deep tenderness in the upper left quadrant. I think he needs imaging, maybe a fast exam." Lucas glanced at her at the chart in her hand, then back to the screen. "He fell down a couple of stairs," he said. "His vitals are fine. I'll take a look." He winced with palpation over his flank and got quieter, Naomi said. "It could be nothing. It could be more." He exhaled a quick rush. "It is always could be more. I've got a cardiac in Bay 2 and a train of flu kids in the hall. I'll get to him." Naomi held his gaze for a beat, then nodded. "All right." She walked back into room 5, adjusted the man's pillow, checked his IV site. "Doc coming?" he asked. "Yes," she said, "soon." His wife watched her eyes searching. "Is he okay?" the woman whispered when her husband looked away. Naomi paused. "He's stable," she said carefully. "If his pain changes or he feels dizzy, you press this call button. Right away, all right?" The woman nodded, clutching the remote like a lifeline. 30 minutes later, Naomi was in room 3, helping a nurse change a dressing when the overhead speaker crackled. "Rapid response room 5. The words dropped into the air like a stone. Naomi was already moving. Her sneakers squeaked as she turned the corner. In room 5, Mr. Dorsey lay pale and sweating, his skin the color of candle wax. The monitor spiked and slid, heart rate racing, blood pressure sinking. His wife stood back against the wall, one hand over her mouth. Lucas barked orders as he pushed the ultrasound head across the man's abdomen. Naomi saw the fluid on the screen dark where it should not be. Internal bleed, Lucas said. His voice had lost its lazy edge. Call surgery, now. Naomi grabbed a second IV line, spiked a bag of fluid, opened the roller clamp fingers steady. She did not speak. She did not need to. The room had already shifted into a different gear. Later, much later, when the OR doors had swung shut and the hallway outside was quiet again, Naomi walked back through the ED. The lights were a little dimmer. The noise had settled into a low, tired murmur. In the staff locker room, she opened the thin metal door that held her things. Inside, there was a folded sweatshirt, a water bottle, a small notebook. She sat on the bench and reached for the paracord bracelet on her wrist, turning it with her fingers until the small metal plate caught the light. Tiny numbers were etched there, but she did not look at them. She just pressed her thumb against the cool surface and listened. Somewhere above, a helicopter chop faded into the distance, swallowed by the city. She closed her locker, the door clicking shut, and stood up when someone called her name outside. The ED kept moving. So did she. The next few days folded into one another, marked less by dates and more by shifts. Morning swing night, lights up, lights down. The hum of the emergency department never really stopped. It only changed volume. Naomi slipped into its rhythm without trying to stand out. She showed up early. She checked the crash cart. She opened drawers and counted what sat in them. The black watch on her wrist ticked quietly while she worked a private metronome. One evening, the waiting room overflowed with winter. People coughed into crumpled tissues. A child whined in a stroller. Someone argued with registration about how long they had been there. Behind the double doors, Naomi stood beside Margot at the nurse's station, reviewing the assignment board. Full house, Margot muttered. Again. She passed Naomi a clipboard. Take rooms 4 and 6. We are playing whack-a-mole tonight. Naomi nodded and moved toward room 4. A young man sat on the bed, jeans torn at the knee temple, sporting a butterfly bandage. His shirt smelled faintly of gasoline and cheap cologne. A police officer leaned against the wall, filling out a report. Car accident, Naomi asked. The officer answered. Rear-ended another car on Broad, he said. More pissed off than hurt from what I can see. The patient lifted a hand. I am fine, he said. Airbags went off, just banged my head. Naomi checked his vitals. Pulse slightly high, blood pressure acceptable, pupils equal in size. But when she asked him to follow her finger with his eyes, she saw something brief and off. A tiny lag on the left, the slightest tightening at the corner of his mouth when he turned his head. How much do you remember, she asked. He frowned. I was on the phone. Then there was a loud noise. Then the airbag, I guess. Why? She asked him to squeeze her hands. His grip was strong on the right, a fraction weaker on the left. Not enough to alarm anyone who was not looking for that exact thing. Naomi wrote her notes, pen scratching across paper. The symbol DP winked near her thumb. Out in the hall, she found Lucas hunched over the computer again. Room 4, she said. He hit his head. There is a subtle delay on his left. Grip is off. I would consider a CT. Lucas rubbed a hand down his face. If I order a CT on every fender bender, radiology will send me hate mail, he said. He is talking. He walked in here. He is young. We are slammed. She waited a heartbeat. He has focal findings, she said quietly. They are small. They are there. Lucas glanced past her, saw the line of stretchers parked in the hallway, heard a cough from 3 different bays at once. I will do a neuro exam, he said. If I see what you see, I will scan. Deal. Naomi gave a small nod and stepped aside. Hours bled together. She moved from room to room. In 6, an elderly woman with a wound on her shin, red and angry around the edges, insisted it was nothing. Naomi eased off the bandage, saw the depth of it, the thin streaks heading up the leg, and flagged antibiotics before the culture even came back. In 2, a man with heart disease complained about fatigue. His medication list sprawled across the chart. Naomi noticed a recent dosage change, remembered a paragraph from a journal article, and quietly questioned it with the resident. Sometimes they listened. Sometimes they were too tired to do anything but follow habit. During a brief lull, Naomi sat at the back of the nurse's station with her small notebook open. She did not write full stories, just fragments. Left-sided lag, plus no recollection of impact. New dose beta blocker HR in 40s. Dishwater gray skin and sepsis, not just pale. Jessie, the youngest nurse on the shift, plopped into the chair beside her with a sigh. Her dark hair was tied up in a messy bun that leaned dangerously to one side. You are still writing, Jessie said. What is that, a burn book for weird symptoms? Naomi smiled faintly. Patterns, she said. Jessie tilted her head, curious. Patterns of what? Things that did not look like much at first, Naomi said, tapping the page, but turned out to matter. Jessie huffed out a small laugh. If I wrote down every weird thing in here, that notebook would catch fire. Margot called Jessie away before she could say more. Naomi went back to her half-lines in shorthand. The man from the car accident remained in room 4 for another hour, scrolling on his phone, complaining to anyone who came in that he was starving. Lucas did a quick exam, ran through the cranial nerve checklist, then moved on. No scan was ordered. Halfway through the night, the rapid response alarm sounded again. Different room this time. Same drop in conversation. Naomi felt her chest tighten for a second, then her body moved on its own. The car accident patient had been sent to the waiting area for discharge instructions when he suddenly slumped forward, words slurring. His left arm dangled in a way no one could mistake. They brought him back past Naomi in a knot of bodies. For a moment, his eyes met hers, confused and unfocused. In CT, the bleeding in his brain glowed white against the gray. By the time Naomi passed through that wing later, the buzz had died down. He was in the ICU, intubated, but alive. 2 residents talked in low voices near the nurse's desk. He was fine when he came in, one said. You cannot scan everyone. Naomi did not step closer. She just kept walking the soles of her shoes, whispering against the floor. No one mentioned that she had flagged him earlier. It was not malicious. There was simply too much to remember. On a slow afternoon, Margot found her in an empty bay restocking supplies. You know, Margot said, leaning against the doorframe, you are very thorough. Naomi looked up, waiting. Sometimes a little too thorough for this place, Margot added. We do not get to chase every maybe, not with this volume. Naomi placed a roll of tape in the drawer, lining it up with the others. I understand, she said. Margot softened her tone. You ever think about transferring to step down or even clinic work, she asked. Quieter. More time. Less chaos in your face. Naomi wiped her hands on her scrub pants. Frontline is not the problem, she said almost to herself. What was that? Nothing, Naomi said. I like it here. Margot studied her for a second, then nodded. All right, just do not drown yourself in details. You are allowed to breathe. The shift went on. Naomi took a breath and kept moving. Later that week, a helicopter thudded overhead as she stepped out of the ambulance bay to take a moment of fresh air. The sound dropped into her body like a stone tossed into water. For half a second, she was not staring at brick walls in a wet parking lot. Heat pressed against her face. Dust stung her eyes. Someone shouted a name she could not quite hear. The rotors faded. The night air of Philadelphia rushed back in cool and damp. Naomi blinked, her fingers already on the paracord bracelet, feeling the worn braid against her skin. Inside, an EMT called her name, holding open the door for the next stretcher. Carter, you up? She let her hand fall from the bracelet, stepped back into the fluorescent light, and reached for the rail of the incoming gurney. The stretcher she grabbed that night was routine. A grocery store slip, a twisted ankle, a woman more embarrassed than injured. Naomi wrapped iced, reassured. She moved through the rest of the shift in small circles, room to station to supply closet and back. By the time she signed out, the sky over Philadelphia had turned from black to a dirty pink at the edges. Days turned into a loose pattern like that. Busy but manageable. Nothing that made the walls lean in. The break came on a Tuesday. It started quietly. Late afternoon light slanted through the high windows, the city outside sliding into rush hour. The ED buzzed with its usual mix of arguments, coughing, and electronic alarms. Naomi was eating in the cafeteria, a plastic container of leftover pasta on the table in front of her phone propped against a salt shaker. An article on trauma resuscitation glowed on the small screen. She turned a forkful of pasta, not really tasting it, eyes scanning a paragraph about lactate trends. The overhead speakers crackled, then a sharp tone cut across the low murmur of conversation. Attention all personnel. Code orange. Multi-vehicle collision on Interstate 76. City bus and multiple passenger vehicles involved. Estimated 12 to 15 critical patients. Initial ETA 10 minutes. The room stopped breathing for a second. Chairs scraped back. Conversations died mid-sentence. Someone swore under their breath. The sound of running feet began in the hallway, picked up without being asked. Naomi had already set down her fork. Her hand went to the watch on her wrist and pressed a small button. The display shifted to a countdown mode. 10 minutes flashed for an instant, then started to slide. She left the tray where it was and stepped into the flow of bodies heading for the ED. Inside, the noise had sharpened. Margot stood at the central station, grabbing nurses as they passed. Clear bays 1 through 6, she ordered. Move stable patients to the hallway if you have to. Call transport. Call radiology. We are clearing the decks. Dr. Ethan Hale appeared beside her, white coat, open tie askew. His voice was calm but carried across the chaos. All right, listen up, he said. We have a bus and multiple cars. That means blunt trauma glass crush injuries. Some will look fine and will not be. We stick to protocol. Trauma 1 through 3 for the worst of the worst. 4 through 6 for the next tier. Everyone else gets parked and sorted. He looked around at the nurses. Senior nurses take the trauma bays. Residents, you are with them. I want lines, airways, chest assessments. No heroics, just good medicine. His eyes passed over Jesse, over Margot, then landed on Naomi. Carter, he said. Triage Station C, vitals, paperwork, basic interventions only. No independent medical decisions. You send anything questionable to me or to the trauma leads. Clear. Naomi met his gaze. For a moment, it felt like the room pulled back, leaving the two of them standing in a narrower space. Clear, she said. He moved on. The spell broke. The room grew louder again. Naomi walked to Station C. It was a corner of the ED near the ambulance entrance, a narrow desk, and a stretcher bay with 2 thin curtains. On the counter, a fresh stack of triage forms waited beside a blood pressure cuff and a pulse oximeter. She checked the gauge on the oxygen tank, ran her fingers over the crash cart at her elbow. Her pen rested in her pocket, its metal body warm against the fabric. Outside, sirens grew from a distant whine to a layered, urgent howl. The first ambulance backed up to the bay doors, lights spinning red across the wet pavement. The doors slammed open. Cold air and the smell of exhaust rushed in with the paramedics. Middle-aged female, one of them called. Bus passenger, complaining of chest and abdominal pain. Blood pressure a little soft en route, but she has been talking. They rolled the stretcher toward Naomi. The woman on it clutched a blanket to her chest with shaking hands. There was glass in her hair, a smear of blood along one cheek. Her lips looked pale against the bruised skin. Naomi stepped in, slipping a blood pressure cuff around the woman's arm, clicking the pulse oximeter onto a finger. What is your name? She asked. Dorothy, the woman whispered. Dot. Dot, I am Naomi, she said. You are safe. You are at St. Gabriel. I'm going to check a few things while the doctor gets ready, all right. Dot nodded, eyes flitting around the room. As the cuff inflated, Naomi watched her chest rise. The breaths were shallow, but not from anxiety. Each inhale stopped short, not because of fear, but because something inside resisted. The monitor blinked. Blood pressure low, but not blinking red yet. Oxygen in the lower 90s. Not screaming, but not comfortable. Any trouble breathing? Naomi asked. Dot hesitated. It feels tight, she said, like something is sitting on me. The paramedic rattled off details to a resident who had just arrived. Mechanism of injury, speed, seatbelt use. Naomi listened with one ear while her hands moved. She laid her palm lightly on Dot's upper abdomen. The muscles tensed hard under her touch. Dot's face went even paler. Sorry, Dot gasped. That hurts. Naomi looked at the bruise that was beginning to spread across her lower left ribs. Her gaze moved to the monitor again, to the slow slide of the numbers. Her pen was in her hand before she realized she had taken it out. She wrote on the form, quick small script. LLQ tenderness, guarding seatbelt, sign, soft BP. She stepped toward the resident, a young doctor with tired eyes and a little dried blood on his sleeve. She is trending down, Naomi said. Left side abdominal pain. She needs a closer look. We will get there, he replied, scanning the form. She is talking. We have at least 3 with compromised airways coming in behind her. She can go to base 6 for now. He started to push the stretcher. Naomi moved with them, one hand steadying an IV line that had been started in the ambulance. She tightened the tape, checked that the drip was still flowing. Base 6 filled. Naomi backed out already, hearing the next siren. The second ambulance brought a teenage boy, face streaked with dried tears and road dust, one arm in a makeshift sling. He walked at the scene, the paramedic said. Complains of shoulder pain and a headache. No loss of consciousness reported, but he looked a little out of it. They rolled him to Naomi. What is your name? She asked. Evan, he said. His voice wobbled. She took his vitals, clipped the pulse ox, then gently placed a hand on his forehead. Warm, a little sweaty. His pupils were almost even. Almost. The left reacted a fraction slower to the flashlight. Look at me, Evan, she said. Do you remember the crash? He frowned. There was a screech, he said. Then I was on the floor, I think. My sister was screaming. I do not know. My head feels weird. She lifted his injured arm a few inches. He winced, but his eyes drifted again, focus slipping just for a breath. Naomi noted the details on his form. Dull ache, foggy recollection, subtle delay. Her pen scratched across the paper. Her watch ticked against her skin. CT for him, she told the resident who stepped in, head at least. He looked at her, then at the boy. Fine, he said. He is young, better safe. That was one win. She did not dwell on it. The third ambulance was already coming through. An older man lay on that stretcher, eyes open, breathing fast. His hands trembled not with cold, but with some inner tremor. His medical alert bracelet flashed in the fluorescent light. 68-year-old male, the paramedic said. Type 2 diabetic. Found on the bus floor, says he has not eaten all day. Sugars are low, normal right now, but he is shaky. Naomi moved closer. Sir, do you feel dizzy? She asked. Just rattled, he said. His accent was thick, his words slightly slurred. I am fine. Let them take care of the kids. His left hand fumbled with the blanket clumsy. Naomi took a blood glucose reading herself. The number hovered on the edge, not critical, not safe. She met his eyes. Humor me, she said. I'm going to get you some juice while we sort things out. You do not have to be a hero tonight. He tried to protest. She did not argue. In the break room, she grabbed a bottle of orange juice from the communal fridge and returned before anyone else had claimed the bay. Small sips, she said, lifting the straw to his lips. It is not a negotiation. He chuckled weakly and drank. After a few minutes, the tremor eased. His color deepened from gray to pinker tones. His breath sounded less frantic. This rhythm continued. Sirens, wheels, voices calling out numbers and findings. Naomi stood at Station C accepting one patient after another. Some were scratched and bruised. Some were silent in ways that made her skin tighten. A man with glass in his hair and small cuts on his arms laughed too loudly when she asked about pain. She listened to his chest and heard a whisper missing where air should be. Pneumothorax. She flagged it got him a chest x-ray and a chest tube before his lung collapsed completely. A woman holding her side brushed off the discomfort as just soreness. Naomi pressed along her ribs, then held pressure on a spot where blood pooled under the skin, slowing a deeper bleed until the surgical team arrived. In each case, her hands moved with a calm that did not quite match the noise around her. She spoke little, but when she did, it was specific. Vitals. Findings. Not guesses. Sirens ebbed, then rose again like waves against the hospital walls. The bus crash had shaken families across the city. Parents arrived breathless, eyes-wide coats thrown on over pajamas. A little girl clung to a stuffed rabbit in the hallway, her face streaked with tears and someone else's blood. Jessie knelt beside her with a damp cloth while talking to a doctor about lab results. At some point in the storm, Ethan appeared near Station C. He had blood on the front of his scrubs, now gloves snapped off and hanging from his hand. He watched Naomi for a moment without speaking. He saw the way she adjusted an IV without looking at her fingers, her attention on a monitor 2 beds away. He saw her anchor a cervical collar at exactly the right tightness, then step back to check another patient's breathing with one quick practiced look. Patients kept coming. Naomi kept moving. In the corner of her vision, the watch on her wrist flashed numbers she did not fully register. Her hand brushed against the paracord bracelet each time she reached into her pocket for the pen. The symbol DP glinted once under the bright lights as she wrote another note, another reminder that small differences meant everything in rooms like these. The stream of patients thinned, but it did not stop. Naomi felt the ache in her shoulders and the grit behind her eyes, yet her hands stayed steady. Another set of doors banged open. Female, early 30s, a paramedic called. Bus passenger. Shielded her kid with her body. Possible broken arm, multiple lacerations, GCS 15. The woman on the stretcher clutched a little girl against her uninjured side. The child's face was smeared with dirt and tears, but she was talking, reaching for a stuffed rabbit someone had tucked by her feet. They are taking you to pediatrics, sweetie, a volunteer said, gently reaching for the girl. Mom will be right behind you. The girl's fingers clung to her mother's shirt until the last possible second. The woman forced a smile. It is okay, Maya, she whispered. I am right here. The child was wheeled away. The mother's smile fell as soon as her daughter disappeared around the corner. Where does it hurt most? Naomi asked, falling into place beside the stretcher as it rolled toward an open bay. Arm, the woman said through clenched teeth. And my side. But I am fine. Just get me a sling and send me upstairs. She tried for another smile. It shook. Naomi applied the blood pressure cuff, clipped on the pulse oximeter, listened to the paramedic's report. Restrained passenger side impact thrown sideways across the seat. No loss of consciousness, no vomiting, complaints of pain at the left arm and left flank. The numbers came up. Blood pressure a little low, heart rate a little high. Nothing that flashed red yet. Naomi leaned in. Deep breath for me, she said. The woman inhaled. Halfway through, she stopped, eyes widening, jaw tightening. Naomi's palm rested flat on her upper abdomen. She felt the muscles spasm and harden under her touch, felt the quiet resistance like a door someone was leaning against from the inside. Sorry, the woman gasped. That hurts. Feels like a cramp. I'm probably just tense. Naomi rolled the woman gently, checking along the ribs. A faint, fresh bruise traced the line of the seatbelt over her left side. Her belly looked only slightly distended, but Naomi could see the way it rose unevenly. On the monitor, the heart rate ticked upward by a few beats. Naomi wrote quickly on the chart. Seatbelt sign, LUQ, tenderness, guarding soft, BP, tachycardic. She did not hand the chart to a resident. She walked straight to the center of the chaos. Ethan stood at the base of Trauma Bay 2, speaking with a respiratory therapist. His gloves were slick with someone else's blood, his hair damp with sweat. He looked up when Naomi spoke. "Dr. Hale," she said. "The mother from the bus, the one whose daughter went to pediatrics. She needs the OR." He wiped his forehead with his sleeve. "She has a broken arm and some bruising," he said. "We will get x-rays, control her pain, then reassess. We are triaging chest and head injuries first." Naomi held onto the edge of his attention. "She has left upper quadrant tenderness and guarding." Naomi said, "Seatbelt signs, slow drop in pressure, rising the heart rate. Her abdomen feels wrong." "You know that feeling." Ethan frowned. Other voices pressed around them, calling numbers, lab results, request after request. A bed banged into a wall. Someone shouted for more suction. "Plenty of people walk away from seatbelt bruises," he said. "We cannot send every one of them upstairs on a hunch." "It is not a hunch," Naomi said, and there was something in her tone that made the noise around them fall back a notch. "She is bleeding somewhere she should not be. If you wait for imaging, you will open her up when she's already falling off a cliff." For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. He studied her face, the steady eyes that did not flinch from his. He had heard that kind of certainty before in a sand-colored tent with a generator whining outside and a line of cots filled with men who looked too young to have that much blood on them. "Name?" he asked abruptly. "Her name is on the chart. But you know who I am talking about," Naomi said. "Bay 8. Something in his jaw worked. Then he nodded once. "Prep her for surgery," he called to the nearest resident. "Call the OR, tell them possible splenic injury. I want them ready." The stretcher rolled away. Naomi stepped back into the current of the ED. 90 minutes and several crises later, Ethan stood outside the operating room, listening as the surgeon gave him the bare facts. "Splenic lacerations, 2 sites," the surgeon said. "She was bleeding slowly but steadily. Another hour, maybe 2, and she would have crashed hard. Good catch." Ethan watched the doors close, the woman inside now sedated, her body opened and fixed for now. Back downstairs, the ED finally began to quiet. Sirens faded. Families gathered in clumps in the waiting area, clutching coats and each other. The smell of antiseptic grew stronger than the smell of blood. Naomi was at Station C again. She was not idle. She moved through the aftermath with the same precision she had shown in the storm. She wiped down monitors, changed out half-empty IV bags for fresh ones, coiled cords, restocked the crash cart. Each item went back to a specific spot, as if she believed the world would expect more of them any minute. Ethan lingered in the doorway unseen. She checked the gauge on the oxygen tank twice. She pushed a bin of gauze 3 centimeters to the left so that it sat flush with the edge of the shelf. The black watch on her wrist glowed faintly green in the dimmer lights. The paracord bracelet caught briefly on the cuff of her scrub top, exposing the small metal plate with tiny etched characters before the fabric slid back into place. Coordinates his mind supplied before he could decide not to think it. He stepped forward until he stood beside the cart. "That was strong work," he said. Naomi looked up. "I did my job," she answered. "That was more than just nursing," he said quietly, calling an OR on clinical signs before anyone else even saw a red number, running that code earlier, seeing that lung that bleed. Her eyes met his, then drifted back to the drawer she was closing. "People were hurt," she said. "We did what we could." He watched her for another moment, questions rising and not yet spoken. Then someone called his name from across the ED and he stepped away. Later in his office, the hospital seemed farther away. The walls muffled the remaining noise. A single desk lamp cast a pool of light over the computer and a stack of charts. Naomi's personnel file lay open in front of him. It was tidy. Community college nursing degree. A rural clinic listed as prior experience. No gaps. No mention of military service. No hint of overseas deployments. It read like dozens of other files he had signed off on over the years, clean and simple. Too simple. He picked up the phone, found a number from an old contact list and dialed. The line clicked a few times before a familiar voice, deeper and rougher than he remembered, came through. "Reyes," the man said. "Jordan, it is Ethan," he said. "Ethan Hale." There was a short pause, then a laugh. "Long time," Jordan said. "You finally get tired of civilians." "Something like that," Ethan said. He glanced at the file again. "I need to ask you about someone. A medic you might have worked with downrange. Name is Naomi Carter." The silence that followed stretched a beat too long. "Say that again," Jordan said. "Naomi Carter," Ethan repeated. He could hear Jordan moving on the other end, as if he had stood up without realizing it. "You sure that's the name on her badge?" Jordan asked. "That is what it says," Ethan replied. Jordan exhaled slowly. "We did not know where she went," he said. "Thought she vanished off the grid. You are telling me Ghost Doc is working your ED?" The nickname landed in the quiet office and stayed there. Ethan gripped the edge of the desk. "Ghost Doc," he repeated. "Senior combat medic," Jordan said. Kandahar Helmand, all the fun places. She ran trauma in a plywood shack with a headlamp and a pocket knife when supply chains failed. There is a story about her keeping 6 guys alive after an IED tore through their convoy. 4 hours under fire, no physician, barely enough blood to go around. Every medic I know has heard it. Ethan pictured the calm way Naomi's hands had moved over the woman from the bus, the certainty in her voice when she had said the word bleed. She never mentioned any of that, he said. She would not, Jordan replied. Last time I heard anything, she was getting out. There was a classified mess that went bad. She took it hard. Good soldiers died. Good soldiers lived. She blamed herself for both. Some people come home and chase that high. She did not. She wanted out. Ethan stared at the tidy lines of the fabricated resume. Her file is fake, he said quietly. It is neat, Jordan corrected. If she wanted to disappear into civilian life, she would have done it right. But listen, Ethan, if she is in your ED, you have someone who has seen every bad thing that can happen to a human body and learned how not to freeze. She is not a new nurse. She is what you send when you cannot afford mistakes. The office felt smaller. The memory of Naomi pressing for the OR of her voice in the chaos slid into place with this new information. Thank you, Ethan said. Do not spook her, Jordan added. She did not leave for no reason. If she is keeping her head down, she has her reasons. After the call ended, the room was very quiet again. The sounds of the hospital filtered in faint but constant. On the desk, Naomi's file lay open, benign and incomplete. On the other side of the building, he knew she was probably finishing her charting, maybe restocking one last drawer before heading out into the night. Ethan closed the file, but the picture of her standing at Station C, watch glowing bracelet catching the light, did not leave with it. By morning, the story of the bus crash had thinned into scattered fragments retold in snatches at the nurses' station and in the line for coffee. People talked about the tangled wreck on the interstate, the little girl who had walked away without a scratch, the mother who had not. They did not talk about Naomi by name. They mentioned a nurse who had seen things early, but in the blur of adrenaline and exhaustion, details blurred. Naomi walked into the cafeteria for her lunch break with her hair pulled back tighter than usual and dark smudges under her eyes. She carried a turkey sandwich in one hand and her phone in the other. The trauma article she had started days ago still waited on the screen, highlighted where she had left off. She picked an empty table near the window and sat with her back to the wall. Habit, not paranoia. From there she could see the room and the doorway. The watch on her wrist showed she had 20 minutes before she had to go back. She had taken 2 bites when a tray landed on the table across from her. Mind if I sit? Ethan asked. He did not wait for more than a small nod before he dropped into the chair. His tie was gone. His scrub top was clean again, the earlier blood washed away, but there were lines around his eyes that had not been there at the start of the week. Naomi closed the article on her phone and set it face down. Long night, he said. Yes, she replied. For a moment they ate in silence, the clatter of dishes and low conversations filling the gap. The cafeteria smelled of coffee, overcooked vegetables, and something sweet from the dessert station. I talked to a friend at Walter Reed last night, Ethan said. Naomi's hand stopped halfway to her mouth. The sandwich hovered, then dropped back to the plate. Did you? She said. Jordan Reyes, he went on. We did a short tour together. He has more stories than sense. Naomi watched his face, not giving him much. He told me about a medic they called Ghost Doc, Ethan said. Senior combat medic, Kandahar, convoys, field surgeries in places that barely counted as buildings. Naomi's jaw tightened once, then relaxed. He tells good stories, she said. He told me about a night when a convoy hit an IED, Ethan said softly. 6 wounded, some of them barely holding on. No physician available, 40 minutes to evac. He said this medic kept them all alive with a headlamp, a combat knife, and whatever she could improvise. The cafeteria noise seemed to move farther away. Naomi stared at a crumb on the table between them. Her fingers had gone to the paracord bracelet thumb, pressing hard into the metal plate until the edges dug into her skin. He likes that one, she said after a moment, leaves out a lot. Such as he asked. The smell, she said. Burned fuel, burned fabric, burned skin. Sand in the wounds because there was no time to rinse it out properly. The screaming. The quiet afterward. The part where I thought one of them was gone, then realized his hand was still trying to hold on to mine. She stopped herself, drew in a breath that shook at the edges, and let it out slowly. Ethan did not look away. He said your name, he said. Your real one. Naomi's mouth twitched. I have had a few, she said. Naomi is the only one I want to answer to here. You wrote a different history in your file, Ethan said. You must know that is not standard. I wanted a job in an ED, not a parade, she said. You see senior combat medic and suddenly everyone wants a war story. They want to put you on a pedestal and then act shocked when you cannot walk on water. There was no bitterness in her voice, just a tired flatness. I am not interested in the pedestal, he said. I am interested in the way you see what is wrong before the numbers change. I am interested in the fact that you called a splenic bleed before anyone else did. Naomi picked up her sandwich but did not eat. In Iraq and Afghanistan, if you miss something small, someone dies, she said. You learn not to miss. You train your eyes until they do not trust easy answers. Then you come home and everyone tells you to relax because the monitor is not read yet. Her thumb rubbed the edge of the bracelet until it squeaked against her skin. I could not keep carrying that kind of weight, she went on. Out there, every decision felt like a verdict. I would lie awake for hours replaying them. The ones who lived, the ones who did not. What I did, what I might have done. I left because I did not trust myself to keep making those calls without breaking. She looked up then, meeting his eyes. I came here to be a nurse, she said. To do good work quietly. To help people without waking up nightly to a list of names and what-ifs. Ethan leaned forward, elbows on the table. You may not want that responsibility, he said. But you are still making those calls. You know that, right? I know, she said. My hands know what to do before I think about it. I see a bruise in the wrong place, a breath that is a little too shallow, a pulse that is not just anxious. It is like my body is still in that tent, whether I want it or not. He let that sit between them. I am not going to out you to the entire hospital, he said finally. I am not going to change your title or drag you into 10 committees. But I am also not going to pretend you're just another new nurse who needs to stay at the paperwork station. Naomi's lips curved slightly, though it was not quite a smile. So, what do you want, Dr. Hale? She asked. I want you not to hold back when you see something, he said. I want you to call me out if I'm missing a bleed. I want you to teach the others how to see what you see if you can stand it. Because we are a better department with you in it, whether your file says so or not. Naomi sat very still. The fluorescent light above them buzzed. A cart rattled by stacking plates and clattering cutlery. I am not going back, she said quietly. Not to being ghost doc, not to being the one everyone expects to save everyone. I cannot carry that again. I am not asking you to, he said. I am asking you to be Naomi Carter, the nurse who kept a woman from bleeding out on my watch because she refused to wait for a pretty picture. Her shoulders dropped a fraction as if some unseen tension had let go. You are very confident for someone who just found out half my file is fiction, she said. I have good references, he replied. That earned him a small, real smile. She picked up her phone, glanced at the time. My break is over, she said. I need to get back. She stood, then paused. As long as I'm working here, she said, I will not let someone die because I was afraid to act. That is as much as I can promise. That is enough, he said. She walked away, tray in hand, shoulders squared. Word of her work during the bus crash moved through the ED in quiet channels. No official announcement, no emails, just small shifts. Residents started listening a little closer when she suggested an extra test. Nurses began to ask her opinion in low voices at the edges of the station. On a slow evening, Jessie found her in an empty bay rolling a portable monitor back into place. Naomi, Jessie said, can I ask you something? Naomi set the monitor against the wall and turned. Mrs. Patterson yesterday, Jessie said. The woman in Bay 3 with the vague chest pain and normal EKG. Everyone thought it was reflux. You looked at her once and told Dr. Park you wanted enzymes and observation, not discharge. How did you know? Naomi thought for a moment. She was sweating, Naomi said. Not from effort. You could see it in the way it gathered at her hairline. Her jaw was tight. She kept rubbing her left shoulder, not her chest. Women do not always present like the textbook. You learn to listen to what they are not saying. Jessie frowned, replaying the image. I saw the shoulder thing, she said. I thought she was just cold. Naomi reached into her pocket and pulled out the metal pen, turning it between her fingers. When something feels off, ask why, she said. Not just once. Ask until you can either explain it or rule it out. Do not ignore the little differences because the big numbers look fine. Jessie nodded slowly. Will you teach me? She asked. Not just the protocols, the way you look at people. Naomi considered her. It is not about being magic, she said. It is about paying attention and being willing to be annoying about it. But if you want to learn, I can tell you what I see. Jessie smiled, relief and eagerness bright in her face. I do, she said. Margot called Jessie's name from the nurse's station, waving a chart. Jessie jogged away, promising to come back. Naomi slipped the pen back into her pocket. Her fingers brushed the watch, then the paracord bracelet. She stood in the doorway of the empty bay for a second, listening to the layered sounds of the Eid, then stepped out to meet the next call of her name. The weeks after the bus crash settled into a different kind of normal. The ED was still loud, and crowded monitors still argued in high-pitched beeps. Families still paced worn paths in the waiting room. The difference was quieter. Naomi felt it in the way people looked at her. Lucas hesitated now before dismissing a concern. When she said take another look, he actually did. Jessie appeared at her side more often, eyes-wide questions hovering just behind her teeth. Even Margot, who had been here longer than anyone, paused to ask, "What is your read?" when a patient gave off a feeling that did not match the chart. Naomi did not seek those moments out. She did not stand taller or talk louder. She just kept watching and touching and listening the way she had always done. One Tuesday afternoon, the ED was full but not frantic. Rain hit the high windows in steady taps. A man in his 50s lay on a stretcher in Bay 2 shirt, open EKG leads pasted across his chest. He complained of dizziness, nothing more. His blood pressure was a little low. His speech was clear. His family waited in chairs nearby, coats folded over their arms. Jessie stood at the foot of the bed, frowning. Naomi glanced in as she passed. "Something wrong?" she asked. Jessie chewed the inside of her cheek. "He says he is just tired," Jessie said. "He walked in here. His vitals are not terrible. Dr. Park wants to give fluids and watch. But his smile is crooked." Naomi stepped closer. "Show me," she said. Jessie turned to the man. "Mr. Holland," she said. "Can you smile for us?" He smiled obligingly. One corner of his mouth lifted a little higher than the other. The left side lagged. His left hand lay on the blanket fingers a little still. Naomi watched Jessie more than she watched the patient. She saw the way Jessie took in the asymmetry, saw her eyes trace from face to hand to vitals and back again. "What do you think?" Naomi asked. Jessie swallowed. "I think he might be having a stroke," she said. "Early, not big yet." "But I do not like that smile, or his left grip, or the way he says his words like they are thick in his mouth." Naomi gave a small nod. "Then call it," she said. Jessie straightened, turned to the hall. "Code stroke in Bay 2, she called. Her voice was not loud, but it carried. The response was quick. Within minutes, Mr. Holland was headed to CT. The scan lit up a small clot. Not catastrophic, not harmless. Intervention followed in a blur of ordered efficiency. Later, after he had been admitted upstairs with his speech clearer and his smile almost even, Jessie found Naomi near the supply room. "You saw it too, right?" Jessie asked. Her hand shook a little on the handle of a box of gloves. "I am not crazy." "You saw it first," Naomi said. "You trusted what you saw. That matters." Jessie blinked back, sudden wetness in her eyes. "I heard your voice in my head," she said. "Ask why. Do not ignore the little differences. It was like you were right behind me." Naomi leaned a shoulder against the wall. "You will not always be right," she said. "None of us are. But the more you practice looking, the more your eyes will tell you when something is wrong. And you listen even when it is inconvenient." Jessie let out a breath she had been holding. "Thank you," she said. Naomi shrugged lightly. "You did the work," she replied. At the monthly departmental meeting, the ED staff crammed into a conference room that felt too small for all the bodies and restless energy. Coffee steamed from cardboard cartons. The projector hummed as Ethan clicked through slides. "Overall, our door-to-needle times are holding," he said. "Our admission rates are steady. What is different is this." The next slide showed a few simple graphs. Early detection of critical deterioration trending upward. Near misses that had been caught before damage was done trending downward. In the last month, we have had several cases where nursing staff identified problems before they appeared on standard screens, Ethan said. You all know some of those stories. The woman with the clean EKG who still went to cath lab. The older gentleman who got thrombolytics in time because someone did not like his smile. Heads turned. A few people glanced at Jessie, who tried to sink into her chair and succeeded only halfway. Ethan did not name names. He did not have to. "This is not about heroics," he said. "This is about attention, about pattern recognition, about trusting your assessments and voicing them. Whatever you are doing, it is helping. Keep doing it." There was a low ripple of murmurs. Someone clapped once, then stopped embarrassed. The meeting moved on to staffing shortages and broken equipment and the usual complaints. Afterward, in the hallway, a senior nurse from another shift approached Naomi at the coffee machine. "I heard you have a knack for seeing trouble before it walks in," she said lightly. Naomi stirred sugar into her coffee. "I have seen a lot," she said. "Maybe you can show us how to borrow those eyes sometime," the nurse replied. "Ask when you want." Naomi said, "If I see something, I will tell you. If you see something, tell me." The nurse nodded, satisfied. That night, the break room was quiet for a moment between waves of patients. The whiteboard on the wall held the schedule for the week. Names, shifts, colored markers looping and crossing. Beneath Carter N, someone had written in smaller letters, "Cool head. Quiet hands. The handwriting was messy. It could have been anyone's. Jesse, Lucas, Margot, a tech who had watched her restart a line with barely a blink. Naomi stood in front of the board, coffee in hand, and read the words twice. Her face did not change much, the corner of her mouth lifted by a millimeter. Her fingers flexed once around the cup. She did not erase it. On her next shift, the ED was its usual tangle of sound and movement. A child cried in Bay 1. A teenager argued into his phone in the hallway, insisting he was fine. A man in work boots dozed in a chair, dirt still ground into the treads. Naomi moved through it all. She checked on a woman with asthma, listening carefully to the wheeze behind her hurried speech. She adjusted the pillow under an old man's neck so that his breathing eased without him knowing why. She pressed her fingers over the pulse at someone's wrist, counting under her breath while the machine tried to catch up. Her watch ticked on. The stopwatch function stayed dark. The paracord bracelet lay flat against her skin, the metal plate warm now from contact. The pen waited in her pocket, ready for the next note, the next small difference worth remembering. From the far end of the hall, Jesse called her name. Naomi. Can you take a look at this? Naomi turned toward the sound, toward the next bed, the next assessment, the next quiet decision. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The room smelled of antiseptic and hope and exhaustion. She walked forward calm and steady into the noise that needed her. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.